Our family on our mom's side has a deep Montana history, especially stemming from Butte and Helena. And we are so proud. One of the things we are most proud of is to call ourselves Montanans. At Up Top Clothing, they have Montana-made and Montana-branded clothing for both men and women. Their Montana Till I Die collection is one of my favorite collections anywhere in the clothing world. And you can shop online and get the Montana Till I Die collection and all the other great gear that Up Top Clothing makes delivered right to your doorstep. Visit teamuptop.com. And if you use the promo code SKYLINE15, you're going to get a discount on all your online ordering. Teamuptop.com, Up Top Clothing, reminding you to take a step back and enjoy them. Everybody, welcome back. Welcome in. 10th anniversary content, Skyline at 10. We made it. We made it 10 years, so we're continuing our top something countdowns. We've been doing top 10 countdowns, but today we have a few more than 10, highlighting the best offensive players that aren't quarterbacks of the last 10 years. If you missed our quarterback countdown, we did top 5 plus a smattering of honorable mentions a couple weeks ago. You can find that on our Skyline Sports MT website, as well as our Skyline Sports YouTube channel, as well as our Big Sky Breakdown podcast series. It's evergreen content, so go check it out whenever you get a chance. Here's the way this one's going to work. We categorize this out. This is basically our top 15 non-quarterback, non-linemen. We also have a couple all-purpose players to highlight because there's several guys that have made huge impacts in football games at a variety of different positions. And because they're used in so many ways, it actually probably negatively impacts their offensive skill player statistics. A guy like Junior Bergen is a great example of that at Montana right now. Electric, impossible to deny that he's not part of the rich history of the Big Sky Conference, especially the last handful of years during his playing career. But he also just doesn't have crazy receiving numbers because they use him in so many different forms and fashions. He's also, he played running back for an entire year of his career, so that also impacted his receiving statistics. So we'll highlight first the big boys, offensive linemen that are memorable and unforgettable so far in the last 10 years in the Big Sky. Then we have our list of all-purpose players, and then we'll get into our list of the top non-lineman offensive skill guys. Brooks Nuanez joining me, Colter Nuanez. It's interesting, Brooks, when we first started Skyline Sports, I think at that exact moment, the Big Sky had been categorized as a quarterbacks league. Then it was a wide receivers league led by an Eastern Washington trio that we will certainly talk quite a bit about upcoming here. And then over the last several years, it's become a running backs league. And right now it is absolutely a running backs league. If you were to name the best offensive players in the league right now, from Eli Gilman and Nick Osmo at Montana to the whole variety of guys, Julius Davis and Scottrey Humphrey at Montana State, to DeMond Bankston at Weber State, on down the line, Elijah Taught-Oliver at Sacramento State, a whole bunch of guys at Idaho. Everybody seems to have a really good running back right now. It's become a running backs league.
Yeah, the ebbs and flows of how you can recruit philosophically where you're playing, trying to beat the Dakota schools, right? The Dakota schools is a real deal of trying to respond and react and play in playoff style of football, especially on the road, especially in cold weather. So I think it's a wonderful transition to have all of them. I wouldn't want just one over and over for the last 20 years, the last 10 years rather, at Skyline. But this is a good list. I'm happy with what we came up with.
No doubt. Okay, so let's highlight the big boys first. This is in no particular order. It's also no surprise to me that these all the offensive linemen we're about to highlight are from the schools that have had the best offensive line units and the schools that have put the highest priority on offensive linemen. For example, we don't really have anybody from Northern Arizona or Montana or Idaho State. The two schools that have led the pace for offensive linemen in the Big Sky Conference over the last 10 years are Montana State, number 1, Eastern Washington, closely behind it, number 2, and then Southern Utah, who hasn't been in the league for about 6 years, but certainly had great offensive linemen while they were there. Then we also have one Idaho guy, but certainly the emphasis gets you there. So the Montana State guys that are unforgettable. Part of this is because Montana State's had a tried and true formula for the last not just 10 years, but 20 plus years. And that is a recruiting formula, but also a development formula. It's been forever since Montana State has decided, hey, we're going to take our best guy, We're going to put him, our best young guy, we're going to put him in the lineup as a redshirt freshman at right tackle. He'll then work his way into being the left tackle. Maybe he stays at right tackle depending on the offense. But that was the case with guys like Brent Schwagert and John Weidenauer before Skyline ever became a thing. But it's also been the case now for the last couple years with guys like Lewis Kidd, who played guard and tackle during his career. Guys like Mitch Brott, who was a 50-plus game starter at Montana State. Guys like J.P. Flynn, who also played tackle and guard. And then the guy who's most recently doing it, and that's Marcus Ware. He was the power tackle for 2 years. Now he's the power guard this year, and he's certainly one of the best guys we've covered, period, in this league.
Yeah, and Marcus Ware is going to get drafted.
Yes, right.
Yeah, and that may end up being in the 7th round or being a high priority free agent. But I think that he's a guy that plays in the NFL. We watched last night the Steelers play on Monday Night Football.
Yep.
And the McCormick kid from
Mason McCormick
from South Dakota State,
4th round draft pick.
He's been starting there since day one, and he looked good, and he pops in the NFL.
He does.
And I think Marcus Ware kind of is in that level of comp. Maybe not quite the athlete.
He's not the foot speed. He's not as big either, but I actually think he might be the athlete, though. I mean, they talk about how,
I just don't think that that's a bad comp. And you're watching guys at this level compete, and you see that Marcus Ware has kind of that makeup right there.
So the 4 Bobcat guys we highlighted were Mitch Brott, Marcus Ware, J.P. Flynn, and Lewis Kidd. Eastern Washington, Tristan Taylor, who was the most starts in school history, right, at Eastern.
Yeah. And
multiple-time All-American.
Started as a freshman, multiple-time All-American.
Spencer Blackburn, who was he and Jake Rogers, the 2 best guys on those Cooper Kupp, Kendrick Bourne, Eastern Washington teams. So those 3 got the nod. Clay DeBoard was also probably right there. He was also a multi-year starter. Eastern's also had a philosophy of getting a talented young guy, throw him to the Wolves, letting him develop, and then all of a sudden you got a 4-year starter as multiple-time All-American. Weber, we highlighted Sua Opeta, who still plays for the Philadelphia Eagles. It was a great player. Came in as a D lineman, transitioned to offensive line, was a dominant multiple-time All-American.
He's fairly strong.
Fairly strong, yeah. One of the scariest guys they've ever brought to the Big Sky kickoff. Like one of the guys where you're interviewing him, you're like, yeah, I'm going to watch you play for a long time. Noah Atagi, also a multi-year starter, multiple-time All-American at Weber State. So those 2 guys, sort of the stalwarts there. And then the Southern Utah guys, Spencer Larson, who was a 3-time All-American, and Braxton Jones, who was only actually in the Big Sky for 2 of his 4 years there at Southern Utah, but then ended up getting drafted by the Chicago Bears as the starting left tackle for the Chicago Bears. And then the one guy who's not from those sort of core 4 programs is Noah Johnson at Idaho. He was a all-league player at the FBS level before they dropped back down, and then remained an all-league player for Idaho's first couple years in the league in 2018, 2019. Anything else to add on the offensive lineman before we move on?
No, I mean, especially as you talk about the running game and the transition to being more of an emphasis on that. That's why there's some of these Montana State guys. There's 4 of them on a pretty solid list. But, I mean, those guys, the production they put out in the running game, it all starts up front. I mean, gosh, we're talking about some historic numbers there. So that's kind of why we leaned on that group.
Skyline at 10, probably presented by Up Top Clothing. Up Top Clothing offering discounts online if you use the checkout code SKYLINE15. Visit teamuptop.com for needing all of your online shopping for lifestyle clothing, hats, hooded sweatshirts. It's getting colder. They got all sorts of logo gear, all sorts of cool stuff there at teamuptop.com. Use SKYLINE15 at checkout. All right, next category, our all-purpose category. So we have 5 guys that are sort of various all-purpose players. Several of them are returners. Several of them are guys that just got the ball in a variety of different ways. We'll start with DeAndre Carter. DeAndre Carter had an awesome last 2 years, particularly at Sacramento State. His senior year, he caught 17 touchdowns. So offensively, he was certainly in the mix. One of the things that left him out of just our true top 10 was just the fact that he only played 1 year of our era. 2014 was his senior year and our first year doing it. But he was a dynamic player. He's still in the NFL. He's been the starting punt returner for multiple NFL teams. And just a really dynamic guy. Eastern Washington, Shaq Hill got overshadowed by a couple other guys we'll get to in just a little while, but contributed in a ton of ways as a returner and as a receiver, slot guy, gadget player, all that. Then Rashid Shaheed, a guy that we have to highlight. He had 18 offensive touchdowns at Weber State, 7 return touchdowns at Weber State, yet it still felt like he was kind of underutilized. I think that's influenced a little bit by the fact that he's just straight running by people in the NFL now, too. I know he got a season-ending injury earlier this year, cut it short there with the New Orleans Saints. But, I mean, he's had moments, man. Like, he's like a Sports Center guy. Like, he has had kick returns, punt returns, and deep balls where he's scored. So when you watch him in the league running by people, you're like, man, they should have just thrown him the ball more. He had good offensive numbers, but he's been utilized really well in New Orleans.
Yeah, we were never emphasized throwing the ball down the field, even though they had a guy like him. He was also a little bit raw. I think he developed quite a bit.
Yep.
But I've heard him on primetime games where the announcers, the play-by-play guy says, Rashid Shaheed, one of the best big threats in the NFL, big play threats in the NFL. I mean, this guy, a different kind of athlete.
Then our last two all-purpose contemporary players from either side of the fiercest rivalry in the league, Sean Chambers at Montana State and Junior Bergen at Montana. Chambers is a totally unique player because there's been very few guys who are as just purely talented as him that had to split time. But then when he didn't have to split time, he would just like go out and win the National Player of the Week. I mean, he won 3 National Players of the Week during the time when Tommy Mellott was busted up and hurt. Chambers then also, when he was in the lineup at the same time as Mellott, it was totally different. He was running their offense when he was the quarterback. When he was the Wildcat guy, when Mellott was healthy, everybody knew what was coming. Guess what? He still scored like 30 touchdowns. We had 19 touchdowns. His senior year was an All-American 2 years in a row as an all-purpose player. So we just never really seen another guy that's like him in terms of just the way that the team used him.
And he could uncork it and rip it. I mean, he could throw the ball fairly well when he wanted. I mean, he put it in the bucket a couple times where it's like, goodness gracious, This guy plays 18 snaps a game. This is wild.
And someone would have said they could play him more. But also, my theory always was that either or was better without the other one, but you were so lucky to have the other one when the other one wasn't in.
Sure.
Chambers was so great when Mellott was out. Look what Mellott's doing now. The Chambers has moved on. Bergen, if you had never watched Junior Bergen play and you were just doing research based on numbers, you would just be like, oh, this guy's okay. Explosive guy, had some punt returns. You watch him play, though, and you see some of the plays that he has scored on and the way that he has ignited Washington Grizzlies Stadium like very few players before him. And then you combine that with his prowess in the open field. I mean, we were literally having discussions in November and December of last year of, is Junior Bergen the greatest open field player, not only in Grizz history, but in the history of the Big Sky Conference? That's how special he is with the ball in his hands. He's battled injuries throughout. He's had to make sacrifices like playing running back when he was a true freshman. Yet here he is, and he is as electrifying of a player as the Big Sky has ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, my vote as far as the open field thing goes. I think that Junior Bergen only has one rival when it comes to the return game. Shaheed is a different kind of more vertical return guy. And
sure.
His only rival is Mark Mariani, and Mark had such a prolific offensive career.
Yeah.
Playing receiver, significantly more statistics than someone like Junior Bergen. But
Totally.
still, this is a little bit of recency bias. Mark Mariani won games in the return game
He
in
did.
the playoffs. But the run that Bergen went on last year, I don't think that it has a rival.
Quintessential skill set for the sideline return that Bobby Houck
Goodness
loves.
gracious, man.
What is a jewelry design center?
JDC is a family-owned business with deep roots in Montana. Why Montana? Because this community made us family, made us artisans, made us believe in love, made us hometown heroes. Because this community made us shine. Why Montana? Because Montana is home.
Cash One Pawn has the most extensive inventory of any pawn shop in western Montana. Whether you're in the market for firearms, power tools, bows, video game consoles, or sunglasses, Cash One Pawn is the best deals around. And now Cash One Pawn gives you the ability to shop online from anywhere. Make CashOnePawn.com part of your shopping habits. Also make sure to download the Cash One Pawn app. Cash One Pawn, Missoula's premier pawn shop, located on Roller Coaster Road on the way to the Y. In the Treasure State, University of Montana football is a way of life. Lithia Ford has long been a proud sponsor of Grizz football, and Lithia Ford of Missoula is thrilled to have several of the best Montana football seniors driving the best trucks in Montana. Aspen Sound is the premier car audio and accessory shop in Montana. Aspen Sound makes sure the boys are riding in style with tinted windows and state-of-the-art stereo systems. There's always a party in Montana. Whether you're going to a concert, a wedding, or a football game, the Montana Party Bus will get you there. Skyline Sports and ESPN MT cover the Big Sky with more depth than anyone. Check out SkylineSportsMT.com and tune in to Nuanez now on 102.9 ESPN Missoula every day. My Montana Roots and Wear Your Roots clothing is your go-to spot for the most unique and comfortable lifestyle clothing you'll find anywhere. And get your custom t-shirts to support your favorite player. From 5 local businesses who love Montana, best of luck to the Grizz as they pursue another Big Sky Conference championship. Big Sky Breakdown, Skyline at 10. All right, let's do our honorable mentions of guys that didn't quite make the top 15. Bo Sandlin, Montana State. He was a University of Miami transfer. One of the most memorable quotes that I ever heard was from Bo Sandlin. He had been actually a junior college guy before Miami, and I remember asking him, what was it that, because when you saw this guy's a physical specimen. He's a freak. I mean, he's 6'6". Like, he looks like a statue with his shirt off. Yeah. And I remember asking him, I was like, so what was it that maybe made you transfer? Because, like, you could play for anyone. I mean, the guy got drafted. And he's like, well, the first time I saw David Njoku with his shirt off, I knew that I was screwed. And I was like, well, if you think that, then Njoku must be a beast. And Njoku still is the starting tight end for the Cleveland Browns.
I saw Njoku with his shirt off 2 days ago in an interview, and Bo Sandlin makes him look like a child. I mean,
Bo Sandlin makes everybody look like a child, man. Bo Sandlin is a monster.
Yeah.
And he had a monstrous year. He got 9 touchdowns. He had one of the biggest statistical stat lines that we've seen for a Bobcat tight end or just a Big Sky tight end in general. He misses the top 15 for me because he was only there for 1 year.
Yeah, 1 year.
And those Tim Cramsey teams, for as high-flying and high-scoring as they were when Rob Ash was the head coach, they didn't win that much. They made the playoffs in 2014 when Sandlin was there, and then 2015 they missed the playoffs, and that was the end of the Ash era. But nobody could touch Sandlin in terms of physical gifts at the tight end position.
One of my big factors to make this list was that you had to be game planned for, and you had to strike fear in an opponent.
Totally.
You had to say, if this team was visiting and you're a fan of whoever they're playing, you had to say, gosh dang it, I'm scared of this guy. This guy could absolutely break the game. This guy could beat us almost single-handedly. And Bo Sandlin is a guy that was endlessly game planned for and was a game breaker. I mean, he absolutely wrecked people. And the up-close eye test, he passed it in spades.
The running back duo from North Dakota also lands in our honorable mention category, John Santiago and Brady Oliveira. I thought Bubba Schweigert was brilliant in his switching John Santiago from a slot receiver for a team that didn't really throw the ball that much to running back. You have this absolute bull in Oliveira, who still is a great CFL running back. He's from Canada, so he's played this great and elongated CFL career. He was the bull in the China shop. Santiago is your big play guy, but also really durable, and they were able to go back and forth. That team, like, everybody gives the Cats a hard time for hardly throwing the ball. That team not only hardly ever threw the ball, but they also sat on the clock. They were going under center most of the time. It wasn't this razzle-dazzle sort of option stuff that the Cats were running. They were running like straight up old school, like ace formation, 2 tight end outside zone, and those guys were the absolute key to it. But they went undefeated and won the Big Sky 1 year. If either one was by themselves, we maybe consider them because they have more lofty stats, but also maybe they wouldn't because they wouldn't have had the duo and the dynamic that they had together.
Yeah, it was kind of like a little different, but it's kind of like Tommy Millard and Sean Chambers. I mean, like they really were this 1-2 punch, and especially Santiago. I mean, I think he could have handled 200 carries, but maybe 150. He was a little bit slight to be an every down guy, especially pounding it the way that they did between the tackles. And Oliveira was that A to his B, and I mean both were really, really good players. Like you said, I think both are borderline first team all league by themselves. I think together they're the best duo that we've covered.
Elijah Dotson, Sac State and Northern Colorado. The transfer sort of impeded him. He would have had really, really lofty stats had he stayed at Sac State. We'll get into the reason why he didn't stay, because there's the young man who came in and basically moved ahead of him, and he will be in our top 10. We'll get to him in just a little while. Dotson, though, still in the league. in the NFL. He's a great sort of third down type of guy. Jeff Cotton from Idaho. Idaho's pass game really struggled when they first got back into the Big Sky Conference. Yet Cotton was a second-team All-American his senior year. He also played a couple seasons in the NFL. He's a great big play guy. So just thought he had to. If you're a multiple-time All-American, you at least got to get mentioned. And then the last guy on our honorable mention list, it's just TBD how it finishes, but he's already off to such an unbelievable start. He's the National Freshman of the Year last year. If you combine his stats from last year and this year, he's already a 2,000-yard rusher, which I think only 11 guys in Grizz history have ever done, and he's been splitting carries for the last 2 years. We'll see if they ever trust him or allow him to be a feature back. But even without being a feature back, he's going to be a 1,000-yard back for the second year in a row. He's already got 13 touchdowns this year. He's already got 20-plus touchdowns in his career. And he just looks different, man. Eli Gilman, when we do this again in 10 years, I think unless he either transfers or gets hurt, he's a surefire guy that's going to be in one of our top 10 or top 20 lists.
Top 10, I mean, top 5. If he stays on the same track, I don't know who will be better than him in our era. I mean, yeah, he's it. It's him, Bergen, and Marcus Weir that are the only active players that are on any of these lists. And we kind of do that because you do need to kind of complete the body of work.
Sure.
But Gilman is popped so much, and he still continues to. We always laugh, Colter. He scores a 60-yard touchdown every game.
He does, man.
And he's like a power back.
Right.
He's got everything.
Other active guys we flirted with, Jackson Slater at Sacramento State as an offensive lineman certainly deserves some recognition. He's going to be a 3-time All-American by the time this thing is all said and done. Also, certainly probably have to consider Efton Chisholm at Eastern Washington. He just went over 300 catches in his career, so second in school history in catches. He's just playing at a time at Eastern Washington where they're just not winning a bunch of games.
He's nasty.
Yeah, he is. He's definitely nasty. But a lot of stories yet to be finished and yet to be completed here in the Big Sky Conference.
Five Valleys Restoration, your view is our view, and what a beautiful view it is. We are proud to be locally owned, locally operated. We love our community here in Missoula and also the full 5 valleys that we do service. We give back to the community, we service our community. Our kids go to school here, we live here, we play here, and we love it.
Just being here in Missoula, just your guys' dedication to the Missoula community, why is that important?
5 or 6 years ago, we sat down and just kind of decided that this is the path we need to take if we're going to be a community-based business and support this community, and we want the support in return. We have to dive into it. So we did that. We've dove in. We like to support the youth of the community through sports and different organizations that support the youth in the community. But for the most part, we just made that dedication that as a locally owned company, with some of our competitors not being locally owned, we wanted to take that dive in and go after it.
The Big Sky Conference. All right, let's dive into our top 15 Skyline at 10, probably presented by Cash One Pawn. Cash One Pawn, the premier pawn shop in Western Montana. Shop online anytime. Cash One Pawn. That's cash, the number 1, pawn.com. Number 15, Andrew Voller, a 3-time All-American, a 3-time first-team All-League tight end, and certainly I think the second best tight end that we've covered during the Skyline Sports era. Also made it to the NFL. Just a really solid but also really smooth type of player.
Really good player. He kind of made their offense go. He was a safety valve. He could get downfield a little bit.
I mean, with what they wanted to do, they ran the ball. Shaheed was just the big play guy, but actually the guy that was getting fed was Voller.
Voller all day, and big forearms, strong wrists.
Definitely. He was a fun guy to interview too. Really fun guy to talk to.
Super cool guy.
He was a great basketball player. We just love having him on the podcast.
He looked the basketball part.
He definitely did.
He's found the weight room. He's a basketball guy that found it. Yeah.
No doubt. Number 14 will stick on the Weber State track, Josh Davis. Davis, you have to feel bad for what could have been. He was the Utah Gatorade Player of the Year, which, we have some Gatorade Players of the Year on here. Not all are created equal. Utah has tremendous high school football.
Great high school football.
Like, if you're the best guy in Utah, you are going wherever you want, especially the University of Utah or BYU.
Definitely.
But anywhere else in the West, too. He blew out his knee. Well, then he gets to Weber, he redshirts, blows out his knee. And he keeps going.
Freshman of the year after that, though.
I mean, freshman of the year.
Yeah, when he played.
I mean, dude, I think he has kick and punt return touchdowns. He also has close to 4,000 yards rushing. He was a 3-time first-team All-Big Sky guy, but then by his senior year,
he was just beat.
He was just a shell, man, and it wasn't his fault. He just had so many carries, so many injuries, and it's just unfortunate. Yet still, I mean, he's widely considered the second greatest running back in Weber State history besides Trevin Smith.
Yeah.
Which is
R.I.P.
Which is like, it's pretty good company to be in,
Pretty good company.
I mean, Josh Davis's resume is as good as anybody's. He's has as many all-league nods because he played so much and then also got hurt. So
6 years there.
got to keep playing.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got as many all-conference certificates, so to speak, as anybody.
He, after the two injuries, or the two knee injuries too, he had an ankle injury. And then when he was a senior, I believe it was in Bozeman. We were covering a game where they were in Bozeman or Missoula. I think it was in Bozeman. And he hurt his ankle again. And then they gave him another 15 carries, watching him limp around, get a carry, come off, limp. I was like, God, man, this guy.
And even his senior year, though, he still had like 700 yards. So
with like being the backup.
Well, they had multiple guys. They had Dante McMillan, Bankston had come on. Like they had a bunch of dudes. So still, I mean,
he's a stud, man.
An admirable career, and he certainly did a great job of making it to the end. Number 13, Emmanuel Butler, Northern Arizona. He also, his last 2 years, just had it all fall apart on him. I mean, he went nuts as a sophomore and a junior. Then he got hurt, had to take like a medical, and then his senior year, he ended up coming back for like 35 catches, 600-something yards, a couple touchdowns. But he was a 65 for 1,312 touchdown type of guy for 2 years in a row. Jeff Choate used to always say, when they were scouting him, Montana State head coach used to always say, the mannequin out in the hall, that's what Emmanuel Butler looks like.
Beautiful body.
He does, man. He was an awesome player. Also, those Northern Arizona guys in full, when Tim Plow, the offensive coordinator, is now the head coach at UC Davis, when he left, that impacted that whole thing. And also, Butler's 2 great years were the 2 years he had with Case Cookus when Case Cookus was healthy. Then they both just traded off who was healthy, who was not healthy, and that really hurt both of them.
Butler more than maybe anyone on our list. I mean, you could also say with Cookus, but Butler is probably number 1 on the list of barely missed the transfer portal era.
Yes,
that guy's going 65, 1,312, and going to Florida State.
Yeah, exactly, man.
Just is
100%, man. He's at Arizona State, no doubt, man. Yeah. He played for this nationally ranked high school, and they made him a tight end.
Yeah, he was a tight end.
And Jerome Sowers was like, well, that dude can play receiver in the Big Sky for sure. And then they just fed him some more. He was an awesome player. Number 12, top-ranked tight end on our list, Marshall Martin. He was a 4-time All-Big Sky selection, second team as a freshman, and then first team All-League 3 years in a row, first team All-American 3 years in a row. His stats for a tight end are completely incomparable. Got 28 touchdowns. He had more catches and receiving yards than any other tight end we've covered 3 seasons in a row. Like if you were to rank the top individual seasons, he's got all 3 of the top ones, and he absolutely made it go. I mean,
Sac State was decent, but not great during his time.
They won the Big Sky three years in a row.
But that was when he was. That's right.
No,
sophomore through senior year.
Yeah. They won the Big Sky 3 years in a row.
Freshman through junior year.
Freshman through junior year, and then he went to the playoffs and won a playoff game. Still,
right.
He, I think. Well, first of all, Troy Taylor introduced so much modern, new age stuff to the Big Sky, and he, I think, showed. I think what Montana State has done with like their H-back, flex-back, like what Derek Snell was and what Rohan Jones is now.
Sure, yeah.
Troy Taylor brought like that Oregon split Y tight end type of concept.
True Y, yep.
A true Y who sometimes is in line, but mostly he's your motion guy.
Like flanker F, yeah.
What Travis Kelce does right now, right? Like, I'm trying to think of another good example in the NFL. Mike Gesicki does this for Cincinnati quite a bit as well in the NFL. That was Martin. I mean, Martin's only about 6'3", 230.
Right.
Like he's not your bruising, blocking tight end, but he's like a dominant slot. And that's where he made so much money. That's why he had so much production.
Yeah, and the first time I ever saw him, I was like, whoa. Because I had only seen him on TV, and then he looked the part. And I'm surprised he didn't really shake out in the NFL. He maybe had a cup of coffee, but
yeah,
I thought maybe just a little undersized.
No doubt. At number 11, the one guy that does make the list with a shorter time in the Skyline Sports era is Jamal Jones. He's a guy that we still keep up with. I actually just saw him about a month ago. Great dude. He's doing some stuff in media. He played in the NFL for several years. But when you look at the resume, he put up better numbers, bigger numbers than a whole bunch of receivers at the University of Montana. He broke Mark Mariani's records for catches and yards in a career. Mariani, Sammy, and Cam are still tied for touchdowns. Jamal Jones also had some of the most iconic moments in Grizz history. I mean, he balled out so hard in that North Dakota State game. That was Bob Stitt's first game in 2015. So I guess Jones actually did have 2 years worth of time in the Skyline era, and just smooth, flossy, all of the above. Just a really, really, really good player.
Yeah, and the eye test. I mean, he is just a beautiful player. His ability to run the route tree, it's probably unrivaled on this list from guys from Montana State. I mean, he's one of the better guys that we've covered, period, let alone the totality of his stats are remarkable. I mean,
sure.
The Grizz have had some really good receivers. I mean, number one on the all-time receiving list for yards nothing to balk at.
Well, the Grizz are always going to have their statistics are not going to be able to be comparable to several other schools in the league in terms of receivers because they've always had groups.
Yeah.
Like
3 receivers, and they run the football. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Even though Jamal Jones was the true, no question, number one.
He still had guys.
Still had Ellis Henderson. Still had Ben Roberts. Like, they had guys that had big numbers as well. Like, my whole era at the University of Montana, everybody was sharing. Mike Farrader, Ryan Bagley, Craig Chambers, on down the line, Eric Allen, so many different, Ty Palmer, Mark Mariani. Like, there's so many guys that you had to spread the ball around. Number 10 on our top 10 list, Alonzo Gilliam from UC Davis. He was a 4-time All-Big Sky guy, a 4-time 1,000-yard rusher. He also had, no question, the most catches and most receiving yards of any running back on this list. He played on a Big Sky title team early in his career. He also pushed UC Davis to the brink of the playoffs later on. He had unbelievable statistics, even with being injured multiple times in his career. And he's a guy that they rode him some more. And he did get dinged a couple times, but nothing catastrophic. And he was able to endure almost all of it.
Yeah, he has that body type where you're like kind of short and a little stout, and you got the calves and you got the thing, and it's just like hard to really square him up. He's just nonstop little tornado. He'd spin to the ground and make sure not to get hit too hard. And then in a good way, in a system where they can manufacture stats like you wouldn't believe. This guy was just getting the ball in all the best places. They kind of built it around him, and he was on good teams. I think if he would have come to Montana more, or even, I don't know how much they played in Idaho, whatever. I think he was a little bit lost in the scene of just people getting to see him live.
Yes,
they see the stats. He's the player of the week. You're like, oh, yeah, Davis has a running back. But I don't know. I saw him live twice. I mean,
twice.
It wasn't like just a ton of just interpersonal interaction.
He was on that crazy UC Davis team that scored 36 points in the fourth quarter to beat the Grizz in 2018.
That's wild.
Then he was back in Montana, the game that Sean Chambers went nuts the very first time that Tommy got hurt during the regular season.
Yep.
But then Gilliam,
I don't think he had a very good game.
He got knocked out of that game. He twisted his ankle.
That's
It wasn't like a catastrophic injury. He just
couldn't play.
And that was one of the sort of coming outs of Lan Larison.
Totally.
Look what Davis has done with Larison, too, though. Dale Larison is also a great player, but he's going to have these crazy statistics by the time it's all done because they hand him the ball 20 times a game. They also throw him the ball 10 times a game.
We've talked about that with players on the Grizz defense throughout the last 5, 6, 7 years that are if you're Dante Olson, whoever's there, sure, Dante Olson's the best version of it, but whoever's there is getting 110 tackles.
Correct.
Same
definitely.
kind of thing at running back.
Number 9, Samari Torre. Torre had the greatest, in my opinion, single season in the history of Grizz football as a receiver, besides Mark Mariani. It's 2009 Mariani and 2019 Samari Torre. Those two, they're the only guys with 85-plus catches, the only guys with 1,400-plus yards, the only guys with 15-plus touchdowns.
Woo!
And Torre also absolutely has to be in the top 10 because if you break one of Randy Moss's records and it happens to be in the playoffs, you're on the list, period. I've never seen somebody go off like he went off, and I've covered Cooper Kupp live and in person 19 times. Torre had 308 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns, and the Grizz scored, 73 in a playoff game against Southeastern Louisiana. Torre went crazy, man.
Torre is quintessential receiver. That's why he's in the league. He's going to be in the league.
Yep.
He is. I always talk about it. People think receivers are like Calvin Johnson or everyone's Randy Moss or 6'4". No, it's this 6'1", 195-pound guy that can go up and high point the ball, super athletic, faster than you think, has the whole route tree, get in and out of breaks, a good dude, like a team player, the whole 9 yards. Awesome player.
Number 8. This guy will always hold a special place in my heart. I just thought he was a wonderful person. I loved talking to him. He had a crazy story. He didn't get recruited at all out of high school. He didn't go to college, period, for a little while. Then he got married, and he's like, maybe I should give this thing a run. It's crazy. I don't know how he wasn't recruited out of high school. He was the Northern California Player of the Year his senior year of high school.
I think he struggled with grades a little bit. I can't remember.
But it's ironic because then he ended up at Cal Poly, which is one of the hardest schools in the world. So I can't remember what the deal was either, but either way, he has one of the great self-anointed nicknames from us here at Skyline Sports. We called him Cup of Joe because you better have an extra Cup of Joe when you're playing against Joe Prothro. He was the fullback for Cal Poly in their triple option offense. There was absolutely no question who was getting the ball 35 times per game. To be able to be that guy, and I mean, he rushed for 155 yards per game for his career.
At a fullback.
That's crazy, man.
You said that he got the ball every play, Colter. He ran one play. Dive. It was dive only.
He had multiple 200-yard games
at
with
fullback.
He doesn't get to line up and
As
read
the
the holes
back.
and read the blocks. The guy was crazy tough. He was so durable. He was unbelievable. He's a truly one of a kind type of guy. And he's the best fullback in the history of FCS football, right?
I can't speak to that.
I can't really either, going back to like the 60s and 70s, but there is nobody in the last 25 years in the triple option era that has been like Joe Prothro.
We need to research some Georgia Southern action here.
No doubt. Adrian Peterson was the guy at Georgia Southern who was so good.
Well, there's got to be a fullback somewhere.
There is for sure. There was the Wofford dude who was an absolute beast.
Woof.
He was like Peyton Hillis's little brother or something like that. He was really good. Kennesaw State has had some pretty good dive backs. But man, dude, I mean, Cup of Joe was unparalleled.
I'm going to talk about another guy on this list soon. When I always say, when I'm down on the sideline and I'm listening to the pop. Every guy has pop. Some guys sound different. Sometimes you hear a guy get hit at running back, and the force he can take and then reciprocate and dish out. There's only one or two guys that even hold a candlestick to Joe Prothro. And when he got hit and he put the defender on his back, it sounded like a steel beam. Like literally there's nothing like the dull deadness of Joe Prothro stealing your soul.
Join Town Pump's Pump It Up Rewards Plus program and never pay full price for fuel again.
Save 5 cents on every gallon every day at any Town Pump across Montana.
Plus, earn and redeem points on your favorite in-store items to get free stuff with our clubs.
Stop in and pick up a rewards card. Download the Pump It Up Rewards Plus app today.
Or visit townpump.com/rewards to register and start saving.
Right down the road, pump it up, oh yeah.
Gotta love it. Skyline at 10, proudly presented in part by Town Pump. Town Pump's keeping us fueled up all season long. Got a crew going over to Cheney this weekend. Couldn't do it without Town Pump. All right, number 7, Hayden Hatton. Multiple-time Big Sky Conference Offensive Player of the Year. I think as good of ball skills as anybody we've covered. That's what he is. He's an offensive rebounder, man. He's cleaning the glass, man. Not overly fast, but just so much swag.
I'd take him all day.
Oh, man. I mean, he made so many big plays. He's the type of guy where, like in that Montana game last year, there's no question who they're throwing the ball to. Everybody knows it, and he still goes and makes the play.
He's kind of like he's kind of mini, or I don't want to say poor man's because this is a historic list here, but he's like kind of mini Cooper Kupp.
No question. He's bigger though.
He's bigger, but I'm saying like he's just like a discount version of Cooper Kupp.
Totally. And this is no offense to Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp's our guy. Kupp is, for all of his great strengths and everything, he's also a tryhard. Hayden Hatton's the coolest MFer in the whole world, man.
Is. Hayden Hatton, when you see him play football for 10 minutes, you go, you're the best baseball player, basketball player. You're the best of everything that you do of people that know you. Yeah.
That's right. I mean, the guy, I watched him sign autographs for like an hour after they beat Montana State. He's the type of guy that's like joking around with you when you're in the media, even if you only met him twice.
Cool
like
dude.
His girlfriend's waiting for him afterwards. You're like, well, where did you come from? I mean, all of it. He's got the whole package. Number 6 only surpasses Hayden Hatton just because of, 1, I think his competitive edge. 2, because if he played anywhere else, he would have been a top 3 receiver statistically in the history of the league. And 3, because he's still a starting receiver in the NFL. Kendrick Bourne comes in at number 6, Eastern Washington, now one of the main guys for the New England Patriots.
This is kind of like 1A, 1B. You could flip these guys. They're very kind of in the same realm to me in their college careers.
I mean, Bourne had comparable stats to Hayden Hatton with being the
number 2.
Way far behind number 2.
Definitely. And like you said, just the glide, the flossiness, the confidence, the smile. he's headlining trades in the NFL. He's
Yes.
not just like an undrafted guy that like gets passed around and like, no, he's a real deal NFL player. He's got 3,000 yards. He's got 20 plus touchdowns in the NFL. And you kind of knew that even when he was like a sophomore trailing a bunch of good receivers at Eastern, you're like, that guy's going to be a dude and he's going to go league. You could just tell from day one.
Born also, if you were making my top 10 podcast guests of all time, Bourne's he's top 5, man.
He's awesome.
He's one of my favorite guys. He was one of the few guys that was like, after I did it for the second time with him, he says, "Yeah, man, here's my number. Just call me anytime." And then we would just roll on it, and he gave me so much good stuff about Cooper Kupp throughout the years, and just a real class act. Skyline at 10, SkylineSportsMT.com.
Happy fall from Alpine Touch. Nice to see ya. To celebrate all the fun things that Montanans like to do in the fall, we want to do a little special giveaway. Some might call it a sweepstakes. To one lucky winner, we're going to ship right to your doorstep a Green Mountain Grill Trek Prime 2.0. This baby will get it done. An assortment of Alpine Touch spices and a box of Montana raised beef. Check out the details below to enter and share your story for a bonus entry. Someone's gonna flip out.
Top 5. Skyline at 10. Top offensive non-quarterbacks of the last decade in the Big Sky Conference. And this man, I would love to see what he was doing right now as a senior in the Big Sky, because he's ripping it up as a senior in the Pac-12 at Arizona State. Cameron Scadaboo, he makes it here at number 5. It's funny because, like we were saying, we only saw this guy live once, and it was before he was the real bell cow type of guy. Both the Cats and the Grizz played down in Sac when he was sort of like the man. But impossible to not notice, even if you're just watching on the stream, but also just so powerful. He also just had a seismic impact on the Sac State program. First of all, he comes in there. Elijah Dotson was a 2-time first-team all-conference guy. Dotson sees this guy, realizes he's not beating this guy out, and Dotson transfers to Northern Colorado. Secondly, Scadaboo's from Sac, and he was one of the headliners of them being able to recruit guys from that city to stay in Sacramento. And then when Troy Taylor leaves, so does Cameron Scadaboo after being the Big Sky Conference Offensive Player of the Year. So maybe a little bit of an incomplete career. Some could actually probably ding us for rating him so high, considering he didn't finish his career in the Big Sky Conference. But if you saw this guy live and in person, he's just as talented as anybody, man. I mean, he's absolutely destroying at Arizona State. I mean, he had like 175 yards against Utah the other day.
Yeah, he went back-to-back 175-yard games. He's so explosive. The eye test, like no one's business. He's so powerful with finishing runs. He's so fast. I think he's league.
He is league.
At Arizona State in 2 years, 19 games so far. He's got 361 touches for 2,200 yards and 20 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, he's transitioned as well as you could possibly hope. I think he was a track guy in high school, so I think he's got good times. The thing that makes him totally unique is there is nobody that looks like him. I mean, he is, in terms of his body, that also can return punts.
Yeah.
Like he's that is the thing that completely sets him apart. Because he's your pretty standard, 5'10", 5'11", 220, 225 pound running back, muscle hamster, big arms, all that. Being that body type and also being fast makes you rare, but not unique. There's very few guys, though, that are built like that are fast like that can also catch a punt. That makes you totally unique. I think that's the thing that's going to give him a chance at the next level.
Yeah, he's so memorable. Again, the explosiveness, he's unmatched in the Skyline era.
Number 4 on our list, I think this guy is what most people at UC Davis would probably consider the greatest offensive player in their school's Division I history. They've certainly had some great players during their D2 history. JT O'Sullivan got drafted. They've had multiple quarterbacks, actually, that got drafted. But since they moved up to D1 and since they moved into the Big Sky Conference, outside of quarterback Jake Mayer, who was one of our top quarterback guys on our countdown, the number 1 guy is Keelan Doss. Doss had unbelievable consistency during his career, 321 catches, over 4,000 receiving yards, and he was just a dominant player from start to finish. Didn't quite hang on in the NFL, which is a little bit surprising. He doesn't quite have that top-level explosiveness, but he's a smooth, flossy dude, and the production just doesn't lie. I mean, he was just so productive, especially his last 3 years there at UC Davis.
Yeah, he was, like you mentioned, just maybe a half a step slow. He's still in the NFL. He's on the Raiders practice squad right now. He was only two active rosters.
Yeah, he was a key subject in the Raiders' Hard Knocks.
Yep.
His rookie year, and you were like rooting for him, and they even like went to UC Davis and like interviewed some of his old coaches and talking about this FCS guy trying to make his way. So cool for him that he's still hanging on.
6'3", 215, 4.56. I hate being that slow. It's always hard.
It's so crazy.
He looked the part. He looks the part. Like if you think of that, about NFL receivers, or you know about big time guys, you see him walking in pads. You're like, who is that guy?
Yeah.
As much as anybody. I mean, like I said, that body type, and then the ability to actually put the production out there, and the consistency. I mean, he was a day one leader, starter, best guy in the league, and never wavered away from that.
Skyline at 10, probably presented by Uptop Clothing. Visit teamuptop.com. Use Skyline 15 at checkout when shopping online. Appreciate Uptop Clothing reminding you to take a step back and enjoy the moment. Into the top 3. Number 3, another former Gatorade Player of the Year out of the state of Washington, and a guy who finished his career, even though he did grad transfer to Cal, still as the all-time leading rusher in the history of Montana State. And this is with being banged up from start to finish. He missed games his freshman year, his sophomore year. He missed what would have been his true senior year, his fourth year, the whole year basically at Montana State, then came back and ripped it up in the playoff run, ended up transferring. He could have put the records all the way out there. If he comes back to MSU and has another 1,000-yard season, you're talking about getting into the top 5 in the history of the league in rushing yards. Still, Isaiah Fonse is incomparable. He is not the fastest guy. He's not the biggest guy. But to be an inside zone running back on a zone read team that doesn't throw the ball, and to be the guy who, when the Bobcats needed, I think of 2 games off the top of my head. When they were at Portland State, Brent Vigen's first year, when they were at Eastern Washington the year before that, what they do? They just turn around and hand the ball to Afonso over and over and over and over again. He had more 30-carry games than anybody we've covered during the Skyline era. His ability to endure but also deliver contact is truly second to none. And I just think the fact that he rushed for so many yards while also being the guy that everybody in the league was keying on from the very first day they ever saw him, and being on teams that didn't throw the ball hardly at all, to still be able to be as productive as he was. And also the number one thing you got to give him credit for is big games, man. He went absolutely bananas. He had 175 and 3 touchdowns against the Grizz in 2019. Even after missing the whole year, he went crazy in the playoffs in 21. The dude is an absolute beast, an absolute monster, and the most unforgettable running back that we've covered in the Big Sky Conference.
Yeah, when you talk about guys, I mentioned it with Joe Prothero, but you talk about Eli Gilman on this list and Brady Oliveri on this list. No one has the buck and the pop that Isaiah Fonse has.
Nobody.
It is like nothing you can even fathom how much pop he has.
Yeah, the thing that's crazy is every guy we've named on here is probably a better athlete than Fonse.
Oh, definitely.
Scadaboo is way
significantly. So is Gilman.
Gilman's a better athlete. Josh Davis, before he gets hurt, is a better athlete.
Yep.
Alonzo Gilliam is a better athlete. This is not to say Afonso is not athletic. Afonso is just
doesn't have like top end speed.
Afonso is the baddest dude in terms of his ability to be tough. I mean, it's crazy that he did battle.
Tough.
He's so tough, man. Again, they were running inside zone back then. They weren't running this outside zone. No. Satchary Humphrey gets a chance to read blocks. And Satchary Humphrey's tough, man. But he gets a chance to read blocks and get upfield, and he's getting second level. Afonso is bucking the nose guard and then bucking the linebacker, and then sometimes he's taking it to the house.
Yeah. I mean, he had 660 touches for 4,000 yards.
Man.
In 3 years.
660, man.
4 years, 3.5, 3 and barely.
3 in the playoffs.
Right.
Yeah, but the
660 for 4,000.
Yeah, man. He also deserves, we talk about just the impact, like Scadaboo coming there and sort of setting the tone, getting guys to come there. Like, Afonso was like the biggest recruit Jeff Choate got. Washington Gatorade Player of the Year. They beat multiple FBSs for him. They bring him in. They start him from day one. He gets hurt like third week, misses some time, back at it. And, they went from borderline playoff team to semifinalist to national championship game, with a main reason being Isaiah Afonso leading the way.
Yeah, riding him. And he had some teammates, one in particular.
Cash One Pawn has the most extensive inventory of any pawn shop in western Montana. Whether you're in the market for firearms, power tools, bows, video game consoles, or sunglasses, Cash One Pawn has the best deals around. And now Cash One Pawn gives you the ability to shop online from anywhere. Make CashOnePawn.com part of your shopping habits. Also make sure to download the Cash One Pawn app. Cash One Pawn, Missoula's premier pawn shop, located on Roller Coaster Road on the way to the Y. Who's the next guy on the list? And I know some people are going to say, of course, duh, you have to put him on here. Others are going to say, well, how does he rank over everybody else? Here's the deal, man. Troy Anderson is the best player we've ever seen. There's no question about that. Troy Anderson is a starting player in the NFL for a reason, but he also, we both agree, is as good, if not better, at playing on the offensive side of the football. Troy Anderson is the best running back we've ever covered. He only played running back for a year. Guess what? He's first team all-conference. He's the best running quarterback I think we'll ever see.
Yes.
Because there just isn't anybody
for 1,900 yards. And 20 touchdowns.
21 touchdowns. Again, with everybody knowing that this guy's a linebacker playing running back, playing quarterback, he's getting the ball. You still can't catch him. If you can catch him, you still can't tackle him.
I mean, Scadabo's going off for 1,600 yards.
Yes.
Afonso's going off for 1,600 yards. Troy threw the ball. He's a quarterback.
Troy Anderson, here's my favorite Troy Anderson statistic. Of Troy Anderson's 21 touchdowns.
Rushing touchdowns.
14 went for 60 yards or more. 14
of them.
Running QB power. This is not like...
How many games are on the schedule, Colter?
That year, the Bobcats played in 13 games, so Troy Anderson was worth a 60-yard touchdown every game.
Every game.
The moment that I knew that...
We should put him on defense.
He was like... The moment I knew that he was like nobody that we'd ever seen, period, was when they were playing Idaho, and it was the biggest rock fight you've ever seen. Paul Petrino and Jeff Choate were just in each other's, from opposite sidelines, just being like, oh, yeah, we'll out-tough you. I'll run some more inside zone, too. They were running like the stupid little Mason Petrino rollout, little 3-yard passes to Jeff Ungerer. And Troy Anderson just said, you know what? F this, man. And he had 2 70-yard touchdowns, the second of which is one of the most iconic pictures that Brooks has ever taken. It's Troy Anderson completely dusting Caden Ellis. Oh, by the way, he got drafted too, Idaho linebacker. Caden Ellis
starts next to him in Atlanta.
He's eating Troy Anderson's dust because Troy Anderson is just all the way outrunning everybody. Yeah, man, it's a completely...
Did he have a sack in that game?
He had a sack the next week against Eastern Washington.
Sure, there you go.
Here's the deal. Here's Troy Anderson's just offensive resume. And I know, again, the haters can say the guy's a linebacker. Well, he played more offense than defense for the first 3.5 years of his career. But he was a first-team all-conference, Big Sky Conference freshman of the year as an all-purpose player his first year. Then he was a first-team all-conference all-purpose player and second-team all-conference quarterback, who also was a third-team all-American quarterback his sophomore year. And then he was a first-team All-American, all-purpose player as a junior. And even then, he scored something like 7, 8, 9 touchdowns. Even then, that was when they were trying to take some of the carries off of him and play him more on defense. He's the best big play guy we've ever seen. I mean, that debut he had against North Dakota when they decided to finally just not rein him in, his freshman year, and he rushed for like 185 yards and 3 touchdowns and just absolutely killed who was the defending Big Sky champions at UND. That was the first, oh, wow, this team's here. This team's real. And that year the 2017 Cats, they were 5-6. They didn't make the playoffs, whatever. But that performance sort of set the tone then for what was the most unique thing we've ever covered. We're never going to see anything like it again.
He played 35 games on offense.
Yeah.
He scored 35 touchdowns.
I mean, I believe he's second in Montana State school history in
35 touchdowns.
In touchdowns, right?
Yeah. And then went and had 118 tackles, solos, and 3 sacks, 11 sacks in his career.
Yep, pretty good. All right.
30 tackles for loss. He has more touchdowns than tackles for loss.
It's crazy. Think about how many tackles for loss he would have had if he would have played formidable snaps on defense before his senior year. Man, so many. An unbelievable amount. In the least climatic countdown in the history of the world.
Colter, who's number one?
Yeah, I wonder who number one might be. The greatest small school football player in the history of college football besides Jerry Rice. It's Cooper Kupp. There's just no question about it. We never... Brooks, I think, covered Kupp. We used to have the docket. We used to have it all written down. But Brooks covered Kupp live, I think, 11 times. I covered Kupp live 17 times. I never saw Cooper Kupp have less than 100 yards receiving. I never saw him have less than 8 catches. And every single game I watched Cooper Kupp play, he scored a touchdown. Every single game I watched him play live and in person, he scored a touchdown. Why? Because he scored 80 of them. That's right, 80. That is, I bet you that you could find, if you were to look at the all-time touchdown leaders at any 2 Big Sky schools and combine them, every single school in the league, just 2, you couldn't find somebody that has 2 players with 80 touchdowns in terms of for example, the Grizz all-time leading touchdown scorer on receiving has 29. That's Sammy Cam and Mark Mariani. Rushing is Chase Reynolds with 50. Think about Mark Mariani plus Chase Reynolds. That's still 1 less touchdown than Cooper Kupp. I bet you could do that across the conference, and it'd be pretty close.
Yeah, he's the GOAT by a lot, and that's just is what it is, man. There's no one like him.
There's really no one like him. I mean, even this last week, coming off an injury, dude balls out and helps the Rams win on primetime TV yet again. So I don't think that there's any recency bias in terms of his performance in the NFL. He's the most consistently great player we've ever covered. He balled out every single time I ever watched him on the stream, on the TV, live and in person, period. And his statistics are completely incomparable.
And how he got there, you called him a tryhard. The effort that he put in to make this happen for himself and his family is also unparalleled. I mean, we're talking about a talent. Don't get me wrong here. I loved watching some of his high school basketball highlights.
I loved it.
He's hooping. He's out there, Dyson, Zach LaVine, and it was all good stuff. But so don't get me wrong here. This guy's an athletic guy.
Oh, he's certainly
athletic. But you ask Cooper Kupp how big he was a freshman year of high school. He's 5'3", 125 pounds.
That's right.
AC Davis, is that right?
AC Davis High School, baby. Yakima, Washington.
And he went out there and made this all happen. And for him... him talking about when he first got to Eastern and he heard his coach talking behind his back about gosh, that guy will never play.
Right.
And just the motivation and the get after it and then the production. Oh my gosh, man. And the competitiveness. Underrated how competitive he is. He's a dog. I mean,
yep.
The body, the body of work, the work ethic, the family structure, his following his grandpa and his dad and, married his high school sweetheart. And this guy, I mean, come on now.
The coaches that gave him opportunity also deserve a ton of credit. Jay Dumas, who was at Montana State and there was a high school coach in Yakima, he told 2 people about him. He told Junior Adams, who was the wide receivers coach at Eastern, and Mike Kramer, who was the head coach at Idaho State. Kramer comes in and offers him, which started it, and then Eastern says, we're not letting this kid get out of state. They gave him an opportunity. Junior Adams, Nick Edwards, Bo Baldwin, they all deserve so much credit. So does Troy Taylor for believing in the guy. And then also when you see what you see and you realize, oh my God, this guy's the biggest gamer that there ever was, throw him the ball, man. And then they did over and over and over and over. 462 catches, had more than 1,500 yards 4 years in a row, and 80 receiving touchdowns. The number 1 player, not only in the last 10 years in the Big Sky Conference offensively, non-quarterbacks, but I would say ever is Cooper Kupp. No question about it.
No question about it.
Skyline Sports at 10, next to Cash One Pond, Town Pump, and Up Top Clothing for the continued support. Thanks to Brooks Nuanez for taking so much time, and thanks so much to you for listening. We'll have our best defensive guys next time we see you for this countdown, but always keep it tuned. Big Sky Breakdown podcast series, SkylineSportsMT.com, and the Skyline Sports YouTube channel. Thanks so much for being here. Skyline Sports, every day, every season.